Is Square Enix's best path forward in AA titles? Let's talk about it. Hey, it's just the gems. I'm Brandon, and I want to propose something here. Square Enix has spent the last decade plus chasing mainstream success, pushing game budgets into the stratosphere and seeing diminishing returns. Did games like Octopath Traveler and Final Fantasy Resonance provide a way forward for them? And if so, is it in our best interests? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but without further ado, let's get into it. Square Enix needs Final Fantasy to be a massive hit, in part to justify the high production costs, but I imagine there's also an element of pride to it as well. This is one of their flagship series. It was the series that put the Square half of Square Enix on the map. It should be among the most beloved of all time, and each new entry should be selling like wildfire. But what is wildfire sales? For reference, the best-selling Final Fantasy is 7, with around 15 million, and that released into a market far less saturated than the one we have today. To push sales higher than that nowadays would mean making some significant gameplay and story concessions. Case in point, this is what they tried to do with Final Fantasy XVI. They made it essentially a big-budget Western action game heavily inspired by dark Western fantasy like Game of Thrones. Series fans were not super enthusiastic about it on the whole, and it wasn't unique or compelling enough to bring in the blue ocean of the non-converted. The creators seemed to feel that the best way to bring in new fans was to forcibly break from series tradition in almost every conceivable way. Final Fantasy XVI had an estimated budget of $59 million, and if you consider advertising as well, it's creeping close to $100 million. In order to recoup their costs, they'd have to sell multiple millions of copies, and that's all before they even start to see a return on investment. And despite that enormous budget and marketing, Final Fantasy XVI hasn't exactly lit the world on fire. Well, it lit a world on fire. The world of that game is pretty miserable, but you know what I mean. Square Enix needs a game like that to sell 20 million copies. Do you know what a Final Fantasy that would sell 20 million copies in this day and age would look like? Well, I'm not sure, but I can promise you it would not be recognizable to its dedicated fan base. To see sales of that caliber today, you need to aim for the lowest common denominator. There are fun games to be had down there in lowest common denominator land for sure. See Grand Theft Auto for proof of that. But the reason we fell in love with Final Fantasy was because of what it did differently than every other bigger game. Another AAA issue is development time. If you're gonna spend 10 years working on a game, it had better do Grand Theft Auto numbers when it finally comes out. Nothing else will justify that extensive dev cycle. This can create a problem for the people in charge of the project since they're definitely feeling the pressure from upper management to put out something earth-shatteringly good. And that pressure can work against them by encouraging them to, again, take the safest, lowest common denominator route in designing the experience. Do we all think Final Fantasy XVI was served well by shifting genres into an action game with cooldown special moves? I think you'd have a hard time defending the decision, but I'm sure during development it felt like a safe path toward massive sales. Make Final Fantasy like so many other games that have performed well and it's bound to have similar success, right? So years and years are spent chasing the wrong ideas, time and money spent in such a way that almost no realistic return is going to meet expectations. Not to mention the human cost, which I think we don't often consider. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into a game like Final Fantasy XVI for so many years, only to have it released to a tepid at best reaction from series fans and less than enthusiastic attention from everyone else. I know it seems like I'm picking on Final Fantasy XVI a lot, and I'm not trying to be cruel. I just think it's emblematic of a problem, and its issues align so well with the points I want to make. So clearly, bigger budget does not equal bigger sales or bigger esteem. If throwing money at the problem isn't the solution, then what is? Octopath Traveler's budget was likely in the $10 million range. Think about the stark difference there. $10 million compared to nearly $100 million. Success for Octopath Traveler looks much different than success for Final Fantasy XVI, right? That lower cost also means shorter development time, which means the devs can move on more quickly to the next game. We get more games, and they don't need every title to sell 20 million copies in order to be viewed as a success. Team Asano, the group behind the HD 2D games and Bravely Default, essentially the in-house Square Enix AA team, is made up of around 10 people. Now, they're obviously not developing the games themselves with a team of that size, but because of the reasonable scope of their projects, they're able to outsource effectively. They keep the creative focus in-house, developing compelling gameplay and stories, and they utilize outside resources to bring it all together. Landcars is the name of the developer actually building Final Fantasy Resonance, and Team Asano has worked with a lot of other studios too, like Artdink for the Dragon Quest remakes and Acquire for Octopath Traveler. These are top-notch studios, and they consistently put out good work. Square Enix is the conductor. They're the orchestra. Together, they're producing some beautiful music. And games. Sorry, I just want to make sure you understood. I'm being metaphorical. Beautiful music. Like, you get it. The scope and the outsourcing keeps the costs low, and both we and they reap the benefit of that. But it's not just the lower cost of development that can lead to more money and greater success in the long run. If you look at a game like Final Fantasy XVI, it's clearly a graphical powerhouse. It's pretty dang beautiful, despite the dreary setting, particularly in those icon battles. Like, holy cow, that was some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen in games in pretty much ever. The coolest. That's great if you're a PlayStation 5 owner or if you have a powerful PC, but you know who it wasn't great for? Switch owners. There was no way in holy hell that Final Fantasy XVI was going to run on the Switch. It probably couldn't even run reasonably well on a Switch 2. Considering Switch was and is the primary source of gaming for many, if not most, of modern gamers, this was a problem. The need to make each new mainline Final Fantasy a technological showcase puts an artificial ceiling on potential sales. AA titles don't face that problem. Square Enix is starting to move away from console exclusivity, which honestly is one of the smartest moves they've ever made. But in order to do that, they just can't be pushing the envelope quite so hard. They need to keep in mind the broader audience out there, the people who only have the Switch or Switch 2. Sure, they'll put Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the Switch 2, it's a smart move, but it comes with really noticeable graphical downgrades. That sort of thing won't matter much to the hardcore Switch audience, though. But better than providing a downgraded version of a game for the mass audience is to make a game that doesn't need any downgrading to begin with. Square Enix's AA productions are perfect for the Switch and Switch 2, and naturally they run really well on PC and PS5 too. In a way, this is sort of like developing for a different type of lowest common denominator, but in a way that's actually beneficial not just for them, but for us too. Octopath Traveler 0 and Final Fantasy Resonance benefit immensely from having such a large potential base of customers. No one is locked out of the experience because they own the wrong console. Developing for all consoles also gives Square Enix a chance to get back to basics, to the sorts of things that made them beloved in the first place. Older games had more soul to them. I know that makes me sound like a nostalgic old fart, and that's true. I am that, but there's more to it than that. Limitations on the Super NES, just for example, forced developers to focus on creating exciting gameplay systems and pushing the envelope with stories and characters. They didn't have the capability to just create a giant open world and drop players into it, knowing that their carefully constructed addictive gameplay loops would keep people absorbed in the game long after they'd actually lost interest in it. It feels like that open world design philosophy, along with producing the fanciest graphics we've ever seen, is the equivalent of the developers jangling keys in front of a baby to keep their attention. Team Asano is making games with old souls. They impose limitations on themselves and work within them, and they're producing the most consistently good output the company has seen in years. The lower budgets also allow them to let their freak flags fly. If Square Enix went fully AAA, do you think we'd see games like the Live Alive remake? No way in hell that would happen. Voice of Cards? That's a bonkers idea for a video game, and it's only possible because AA development makes so much financial sense. If we want more games with soul, we need to encourage Square Enix and every developer, honestly, to put more focus on AA games. That's not to say there's no room for AAA. I just think we need to reconsider the how and why of AAA games. What are some big differences between the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy and Final Fantasy XVI? They both share the Final Fantasy name, but the Remake trilogy definitely feels more optimistic, enthusiastic, I don't know. There's an air of positivity to the whole production, and you can feel it in everything from the gameplay design to the music to the graphics. It is a primo experience, and you can feel the triple anus of it. Did I just write triple anus? How do I say that without it sounding like that? You can feel the triple A-acity. No. You can feel how triple A it is. It's oozing out of every pore. God. I need an editor. You can feel the development team's love for their work in every single second. This is because Final Fantasy VII Remake is a passion project for its leads. This is a victory lap that Square Enix Corporate is allowing them to take, at least in part, I imagine, to thank them for their decades of hard work and for the billions and billions of yen they've made for shareholders. I remember when the first Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and there were rumors flying around that it wasn't selling as well as Square Enix had hoped, and the whole series was at risk of cancellation. I knew that couldn't be true because this trilogy was a love letter to series fans and a celebration of Final Fantasy for the developers themselves. I know the remake trilogy doesn't work for everyone, and there are plenty of people out there who don't like those games, but I don't think they can argue that the developers aren't making exactly the games they want to make. They're not beholden to some lowest common denominator focus group that's telling them every step they need to take to make this some massive mainstream success. This isn't designed by committee to appeal to your average GTA fan. It's made for Final Fantasy lovers, full stop. Even its structure suggests Square Enix Corporate is taking a hands-off approach. Splitting the game up into 3 parts separated by years in between releases, that's a great way to piss off a mainstream audience, especially when the first game was just called Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it only covered like the first maybe 4 hours of the original game. Who cares? They're making the games they want to make. If you pay attention, you can really feel the passion. These are games made with intentions far beyond increasing the bottom line. But funny enough, making games that way actually is a great way to increase the bottom line. People are drawn to passion in art. Soulless money grabs might occasionally find widespread success, but more often than not, the audience is wise to them and just stays away. And just to be clear, once more, I'm not trying to pick on Final Fantasy XVI too much. I don't think 16 was a soulless money grab. I do think it was a misguided attempt to broaden the appeal of the series, but I don't think there was any ill will toward the audience. There's one more thing we need to think about though. Every game can't have the budget of a Final Fantasy XVI or a Final Fantasy VII Remake. Diversity is the key. It's great for a company like Square Enix to have tentpole games that come out every year. Games like the inevitable Final Fantasy XVII or Dragon Quest XII, or even a new game that doesn't already have a Roman numeral appended to it. They definitely don't want to cede the AAA arms race entirely. They clearly have a great love for pushing the presentation envelope, and they should be allowed to do that. But their new strategy, which is finally now starting to fully take shape, is going to serve them well as they go forward. The occasional tentpole game surrounded by a plethora of mid-market, AA games that break new ground in terms of story, characters, combat, and who knows what else. Square Enix also has an indie publishing arm that I hope gets more of a workout as time goes on. With a 3-tiered approach, they can keep money and innovation flowing, and they can support the big budget passion projects they love. If they can resist the allure of the GTA audience, and I know how difficult that'll be, but if they can do it, they'll firmly establish a place at the RPG table for generations to come. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Where are you at on Square Enix's strategy? Do you think they're on the right track? Or do you think they need to double down even harder on capturing that GTA crowd? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Later.